Welcome, everyone, to this episode of the Talk They Hear You podcast, What Parents Are Saying. We're doing something different today. We're bringing you man on the street type interviews with attendees at SAMHSA's National Prevention Day. On this day in January, we celebrated 20 years of leading with science, enhancing lives, and advancing substance use and misuse prevention. SAMHSA's Prevention Day is celebrated in conjunction with CADCA, the Community of Anti-Drug Coalitions of America, and its National Leadership Forum. This year, the combined events saw over 4,000 attendees, making the last week in January a profoundly important week for prevention and coalitions from across the country. Our interview question was, what is your best advice, tip, or technique for parents in their efforts to help their kids navigate away from alcohol and drugs? We had the pleasure of talking with 37 people, even some youth ambassadors. We started the day getting to speak with Dr. Marian Delphin-Rittman, SAMHSA's Assistant Secretary of Mental Health and Substance Use. Her leadership really helps shape prevention in our country. Then Captain Christopher Jones, the director of CSAP, which is the Center of Substance Abuse Prevention, and General Barry Price, the president and CEO of CADCA. And that was just 3 of the amazing people that we got to talk with. Everything we heard was well worth the listen. Hope you enjoy. This is the Talk They Hear You, What Parents Are Saying podcast. And we're here at SAMHSA's Prevention Day talking to attendees about really just their advice for parents. What is the most important thing that a parent should know? Do you have any ideas for us?
Yeah, so, I would say that the big thing is just keeping the conversations and space open for conversations with young people. I think that so makes a difference. I'm not a parent, but I do have many, many nieces and nephews, and, these days it takes a village. So, I think it's just been so important to be able to let young folks know that they can bring any issue to the table and it's okay.
The niece and nephew and the expanded family can be so powerful. Have you ever had nieces or nephews come to you with conversations or issues and that they wanted your advice on?
Yes, I have. And, I think that it so helps, I think, young people to have many people in their lives that they can talk to.
Right.
I think aunts or uncles or just family members and even friends being there for young folks in a non-judgmental way and just being present and listening, even sharing own personal experiences that can help to sort of lend guidance. I think all of that makes a difference.
Yeah, life's hard, and our kids don't really know that we all know that it's hard, right?
And, yes, absolutely. And so I think, just letting young folks know that certainly times can be challenging in terms of the substances and questions they may have.
Yeah.
But being there to be able to answer any questions, I think is helpful.
That is a fantastic message for our listeners. Thank you so much. And will you introduce yourself to us?
Yes, I'm Marian Delphin-Rittman, and I'm the Assistant Secretary for Mental Health and Substance Use and the Administrator of SAMHSA.
We are honored to get to talk to you today. Thank you so much for that. We look forward to the day.
Thank you. Thanks for being here, and thanks for doing this.
Thank you. Take care.
Take care.
Next is Captain Christopher Jones, the director of CSAP, and General Barry Price, the president and CEO of CADCA. Just like Dr. Delphin-Rittman, they play an important family role as well. For them, it's dad. It doesn't matter what our professional titles are. If we have kids or kids in our lives, it's all the same. We're asking just what are some tips that you think parents need to know or things that parents should know?
Sure. I think first is just that communication is key.
Yeah.
Talking to your kids is so important. And that they may not always express that they want to talk to you, but they do. I had this conversation with my 10-year-old the other night. And she sort of expressed something, couldn't fully articulate it, and we just spent time talking. Yeah. And I thought, all right, this is the pattern I want to set up now so that when she becomes a teenager, we've already got that built in, that we can talk, even if it's a tough talk.
Oh, I like that. And starting young and even talking about talking and working something out so that you're understanding each other.
Yeah.
Is that kind of
And between parents, but also replicating that with her friends. I mean, it's often a conversation we have is like, I'm having a conflict with so-and-so. How do I talk? And we just do a little coaching of like, here's a scenario, and how would you approach this if this happens again? And
that's nice.
I hope that we're instilling the protective factors that will pay off later.
Oh, that's fantastic. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Sure.
We're honored.
Do you have children?
I do. I have a son.
Any advice from raising your son?
Yeah, it's just expose them.
Expose them.
Talk to them.
Yeah.
The dinner table
Okay.
is a great equalizer where you can have candid conversations and really get to know them so that they're not strangers.
Yeah.
So we have dinner every night.
That's great.
So
That's great. Thank you,
okay,
sir. We
good to see you.
appreciate it.
Thanks
Take
a lot.
care.
Fran Harding, the former director of CSAP, speaks with us next, along with Rob Vincent. Rob is the Associate Administrator for Alcohol Prevention and Treatment Policy at CSAP. He and Nell Nadal oversee the entire Talk They Hear You campaign for SAMHSA. What do you think parents need to know when it comes to alcohol and drug use?
First and foremost, the dangers of them.
Yeah.
Help them, depending upon their age, make sure that they understand it's illegal for some people rather than others. And they need to know the dangers of different things.
Dangers and harmful effects, but I would also add be present as a parent and a caregiver.
Yeah.
Be aware of what your children are doing, be engaged.
Yep.
Have many conversations routinely, not just the one big talk, because people always want to do the one big talk. And
Check it off the list.
Well, check it off the list, but usually the kid can't wait to get out of the room and the parent's scared to death.
Right, right.
So, try to make it natural. 61-minute conversations. Do it as you go, all the time.
That's great.
Totally agree. And it doesn't matter how old they are. Because oftentimes they think if I'm out of the house and I go to college, I can do what I want because other people are doing it. No, you've got to be the one to show them how it's healthy and how it's going to be safe and how they're going to get better grades.
Well, especially at all the key transition points in life. College being a great example. But entering into high school, exiting high school, into college, first job.
Right.
All of those become big moments. Parenting doesn't stop just because somebody turned 21.
Yeah. Good point. Thank you so much. Next, you'll hear from friends of the campaign from Hawaii discussing generational opportunities and Vermont talking about the power of community. Today, we're just asking people their best advice. So if you are a parent, tell us what you've done. If you are? 3 boys. Oh my gosh.
In their mid-30s and one 10 years after the fact, and he's 25.
Oh my goodness.
So I see a difference between the two parenting cultures.
Okay.
It's really interesting.
The older kids versus the younger. It is changing, isn't it? Any way to articulate what do you think that difference is?
I think parents in this generation right now, what I'm seeing is that they want to be more friends with their children versus I think in an older time, there was still that friendship, but at the same time, you sort of held that line.
Yeah.
You told them what was acceptable, what was not acceptable.
Right.
And I'm not saying parents don't do it at all. I'm not generalizing.
Right.
But I do see a portion of that happening.
Yeah.
And I'd like to see parents just take a firmer stance in being that parental role versus a friend role.
Yeah. That's really a parenting dilemma because you do A, love your kids and like being with them, and then B, you want the home to be as stress-free as it possibly can be, and holding the line, especially in the drug and alcohol space, especially when they get to high school, when there's a lot of conflict around it, it's hard. I have fought it with my kids as well, and every parent, I think, fights it differently. I wish there was a magic comment or idea.
I always think about this, and granted, my kids, they've grown and they know where I hold the line. They make their own choices beyond that.
Right.
But hopefully when they're younger, you've instilled those consistent messages.
Right.
That there's that little in their ear saying, what grandma approved, what mom approved.
Yeah.
Am I making the right decision? And after that, we have to trust their judgment.
Yeah. And that maybe is a good way to perceive it as a parent, that you want to be that voice in their head, but they have to take it from there.
And you just don't become a parent in their teenage years. That consistency, messaging needs to happen at different appropriate levels.
Right.
From the very get-go, from preschool all the way up until they're even young adults in college.
Yeah.
Because oftentimes when they're out of sight, out of mind.
Right. It's almost a relief as a parent. It's like, I don't have to watch.
Right. Or even the kids, too.
Right, exactly.
We used to produce a show called Bridging the Gap. This young parents, it was a show for young people talking to adults, and his message was, don't give up on us. Even if we push you away as high schoolers, don't give up on us, because we need that consistent voice. We need to hear those messaging, and that's what always struck inside of me as well. You know, it's just don't give up.
Don't give up.
Keep saying, being that broken record,
Right.
and keep saying that message.
And that is so powerful coming from a younger person. This idea that you were just talking about of parents wanting to know what their neighbors are doing.
Okay, I'll give you, in our community, I really bet it's that how do local parents so that they realize they're not alone in supporting their kids to make healthy choices. And that it's not coming from an organization, so it's not the organization saying, this is how you do it.
Right.
It's the organization giving the parents the tools and the resources and the information so that the parents can take over. We've really started in the last couple of years to make this like a community message so that it's for the health of the community and that everyone has a role. I don't have kids. Or, no, my kids are grown. They've left the house. I don't have anything to do with kids anymore. But they do. We recently did a talk with K through 8 faculty and staff about vaping. And the teachers of the younger grades were like, this doesn't have anything to do with me. And actually in Vermont, we're seeing kids of second grade, of kindergarten, bringing vape pens to school. They don't know what they are. They know that their parents are using them. And so, educating the K 2, 3, 4 teachers is important. And at first they were like, this doesn't have anything to do with me. But it does.
But it does. It's the community and we all live in it.
Locking up their medications.
Yeah.
A friend of mine years and years and years ago ended up bringing her 4-year-old to the hospital because she successfully opened up a bottle of Tylenol that she found on the kitchen counter. It was a complete error. Immediately the parent, never since, locks all medications.
Even the over-the-counter one. At the end of the day, it's parents with their parenting peers making decisions
so
and working together.
Having a cocktail party before they go to see their kids' theater show. Or they're not at the country club having a glass of wine with lunch and then going to pick their kids up after school. And when you walk around with a travel mug at a soccer game, what's in that travel mug? Or when you go home at the end of the day and your kids are already at the kitchen counter and you walk in and you say hi and you reach for the glass of wine. What message is that sending our kids? Parents have to know they're not alone. And yes, my kids are older now, but I really felt alone, and so did my husband, in helping our kids understand how to make healthy choices. I didn't realize that all the other parents in the community were having those other conversations like my husband and me.
Because if you knew, then when your kid walks out the door on Friday night, you have a greater sense of what they're going to encounter, who the allies are, and...
So we started, my husband and I, we would call when our kids went to a friend's house and say, are you going to be home? Do you know that my son's coming over, or my daughter? And I also received phone calls from parents when my kids had friends over. And I was like, this is so cool. I'm not the only mother that's calling and being the weird one.
I know. The amount of self-consciousness we still feel as parents,
But why should we have that feeling that we're the only one? Shouldn't that be the norm?
And I'm just sitting here thinking of a parent who's listening to this. Sometimes you might have to be the parent that starts it. Just make the call.
We shouldn't feel like that should be the norm. Right?
And I bet in a lot of communities, one parent starting it could create the norm. That's awesome. And you're also making me think of one experience. I did that too as a parent, and it all went really well, except for one experience where I really did have a parent who I thought was a friend of mine, really come down on me. And our relationship was uncomfortable for the next couple years. But, you know,
you have to protect your kids.
Yeah.
And if it's just that one parent that gives you pushback, then eventually, like a social norms campaign would show that that one parent is actually going to go and join the majority eventually. It might take 2, 3, 5 years, but eventually they're going to want to do what everyone else is doing.
Yeah. This is great advice. Thank you so much.
Next, a coalition member from Wisconsin gives great advice about talking off the cuff and ending conversations with our kids well.
Any insights that you would share with us?
I would say the best thing I've come up with so far that seems to be have an impact with the parents, with the kids that I'm working with, is to just take advantage of any opportunity you have to talk to your kids just off the cuff.
Off the cuff.
Saw a billboard, or you heard something on TV, and or you're sitting watching something with your kids, and you see something, ask them about it. And I have parents who get really angst when they're like, I don't know what to say, and I don't know how to, it's like you don't have to do this huge
dissertation.
Right after dinner now, we're going to have this meeting, and everybody's, weirded out.
So that doesn't have to be it.
No, it doesn't have to be it. Just take opportunities as they're arising.
And so you're watching TV, and everybody's getting really drunk in the scene and the TV. Is it just what do you guys think about that? That kind of a question?
Just a question, open-ended question, and see what they say. And they will often say more than parents think they're going to say.
Right.
Which gives parents more things to think about in terms of, either continuing with that conversation or, to think about it a little bit, and what are your next questions you want to know. What's happening in school? What are your friends doing?
Yeah.
What do you think your friends' parents are thinking? They'll tell you a lot.
I think there's a tendency when parents even do start to hear their kids talk about it to want to shut it down, to be like, no, you can't, or I don't want you to. Is there a way, do you think, they can gracefully get out of that conversation or end it where they've said something definitive but haven't freaked out?
For the parent?
For the parent.
I don't know, for sure. I'm not a parent, but
sure.
I have one parent who's like, she should be the guru of conversations with kids. She handles everything. Sometimes she'll just say, I'm really glad you shared that. I learned something I didn't know today.
Oh, I love that.
And that stuck. I mean, it's kind of an ending point.
Right.
But it was, she's thanking them, the kid, her child, or the neighbor's
friends,
kids,
right?
Not feeling attacked.
Right.
Or, just like this.
That's
I'm so
great.
glad you shared that.
That's fantastic.
And then they can go on. They can continue the conversation if she wants to.
Right.
Or it's a nice ending place, and it leads the door open to come back.
That's so helpful.
More parents and community members from Virginia and Maryland who are working with parents share this.
What's your best advice for parents who are trying to help their kids navigate away from alcohol and drugs?
Talk to your child and keep that line of communication open.
We really appreciate that. And parents are they're all struggling a little bit.
Yes.
Especially around this topic. Yes. Or we're all ignoring it.
Right.
And so any kind of advice and hearing from a lot of different voices is useful.
A lot of lack of awareness.
For parents.
For parents. Everybody's like, not my kid.
Right.
Not my kid.
And it's not that big a deal anyway.
Right. Yes. And the drugs have become so much more dangerous. So.
Right.
So we have to get in front of this.
I agree. We also know they're all related.
Yes.
You don't just wake up one day and start taking fentanyl.
No. Absolutely.
It's a progression.
It's a gateway.
Yeah.
Right.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Take care. Talk
with your kids.
Just
as often as you can, as often as they let you, come to them and talk with them.
Yeah.
Just talk and repeat. They do hear you.
That's great. Thank you.
Hear profound ideas from this power mom who's in recovery and also in prevention.
I loved what you just said.
Oh, thank you.
So I'm not even sure how to ask you the question, but can you say it again about?
So, I really have a passion. I'm a peer recovery specialist with our local health department in our area. And the reason why I do what I do is because I am an addict. I'm in recovery. I choose to work a 12-step program. But my point of it was, what the passion with women and children for me is I was a single mom. So, when I choose to get clean, I took my daughter with me. I'm a parent of 3, but my older boys were older and grown and out of the house. But my daughter, at the time when I got clean, she was 7. And so I took her to every meeting with me. If I was bold enough to get drunk and get high in front of her, then I needed to be bold enough to show her my recovery on that side of it. So I took her to every meeting. Every time I had to go somewhere and it was for my recovery, I wanted her to see that side of it. And so there's that stigma sometimes that, oh, you know, we can't take our kids there. We can't do this and that. Oh, yes, you can. And what we have to do is, not just as women, but as parents, we have to show them. Our children lead by example. So we have to learn and show them, okay, well, this is where I was, but here I am today. Right. And if you want to follow in my footsteps, then watch me build my life back up from the ground up. Watch me grow. Watch me be that mom I need to be today. You know, I can't go back and change the past, but I can show you a better way.
Okay, I'm just going to start bawling here. It's so powerful and so important. I'm so glad that we have listeners that are going to get to hear this because it's true.
Like for me personally, like there was many things that threw me, you know, into my addiction. There was domestic violence, there was, you know, depression, anxiety, you know, that self-shame, those things like that. But it was like when I could start dealing with that for me, and learn how to heal that for me, then I could learn how to properly love my kids. I could probably learn how to love myself, to love them, and show up and be there.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Thank you so much.
People came to Prevention Day from far and away. This parent and counselor from the St. Croix Virgin Islands speaks to us about keeping communication open.
Yeah. Have any thoughts for us today?
My thing is keeping the conversation open about substance abuse and the harmful effects of it, and even with underage group drinking, for them to just be aware that it's problematic. Me being a parent and also a counselor for parents, it's essential for us to keep the conversation going and talk with them about it.
Do you find parents are surprised that alcohol and drugs, maybe less so, but that alcohol can be problematic for kids?
Somewhat.
Some?
Yeah, I'm not sure why they would be very surprised. You know, it's just a lot of bad influential people around the kids a lot of the times.
Right.
So they have to be careful about that.
Yeah, okay.
And also always leaving the door open for them to talk with them, so the kids feel free to talk with them about everything and anything.
Yeah, which can be daunting for parents, but still better than them not, right? Yeah. So, well, very nice. Thank you so much.
Communities Talk is another excellent SAMHSA program, and their table was right next to our table at Prevention Day. They tell us about staying connected and having fun.
Put the phone down.
Okay.
Talk to them.
Actually, don't just text them. Where are you?
It's like such a wonder, not only to the connection with parents, but it also just supports, like, it just makes them feel seen, heard, and I think once the child feels seen and heard, it's just off to the races, and they'll be more successful. But if a parent doesn't want to tell you anything, then that's just where rifts start.
And excellent. What else?
Thanks. I agree with putting the phone down, but also if you do have the phone, still text. Find out what they like or what's funny, what's hip. Talk to their friends. Understand what the friends like as well. Just to understand like the language that they're using as well too.
Awesome. And building relationships in all of these. Any thoughts for us?
I think we're so managed by schedules. We're all trying to do so many things, and I think that particularly for parents, right, trying to manage their kids' schedules, their own schedules, that maybe to kickstart those conversations, start scheduling time to talk, scheduling time to spend together.
I like
where
it.
You can have those conversations, and then once you start doing that, that becomes a behavior, becomes a routine.
Yeah.
And then you won't have to schedule it anymore because you'll have more natural inroads for those conversations to happen.
You.
Yes. Remember to have fun. I think we are, especially living here in this area, we're so structured and we're competitive. And I think we just really need to relax and just have fun.
Figure out how to laugh.
Yes.
Yeah. That's great. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Miss Macon from Washington, D.C. talks about paying attention to the details.
Any message of hope or anything that you can tell us?
Pay attention to the details because the details talk about the change.
Ooh. I like that. Okay, so tell me more about that.
When we are in our everyday, the hustle and bustle, everything looks regular. But when details change, the small things, we wait for big things to happen. But nothing big ruins. It's always the smaller things. So if we catch it while it's minute, then we can deal with it before it gets big.
And that really applies to literally everything, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But certainly in the alcohol and drug space.
Yes.
And you can see those changes, can't you?
Yes, whether it's the smell or the difference in the way they dress,
Yeah.
your eye color,
Right.
small things change.
Right.
And even attitude.
Yeah.
Attitude is the first thing you'll see.
Oh my
And we
God.
just overlook it like, oh, they're tired or oh, they're overworked or it's just a bad day. But sometimes that's not the case.
That's not the case. And we want to get in there and we want to help if there's something that needs to be tending to, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, that's lovely.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Dad and prevention specialist Elijah talks with us next.
Yeah.
That's my first child. And then like I have a youth group. So
Yeah.
I'm more so do the youth stuff, but I still talk to
Parents
parents.
about that? Okay.
Yeah.
What's their best advice for parents? What do they think parents need to know when it comes to drugs and alcohol?
I think they need to know that their child has a lot of access to them things more than they realize.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stores, liquor stores, naughty tobacco shops is popping up out of everywhere that sells to kids. We actually did a study. We went to 100 stores. No, I'm sorry, we went to 20 stores. We gave $100 to the kids. We went to 20 stores in the Metro Detroit area. 18 out of 20 sold to a kid that was 14.
Oh my God.
Right.
Can you believe?
Right. So I would just say check your students' bags when they come in from school. Again, try to pick them up every day, and then just have those real conversations with them about what this is due to.
That's amazing. That's great.
Tracy from Washington State talks about what being involved can look like.
Well, Debbie, I think if parents get more involved in their kids' lives,
okay,
and not allow them to just be free flowing, and get to know their friends, get to know their friends' parents.
Yeah, right.
Come on,
Yeah.
don't let somebody come to your house and you have not met the parent.
Yeah, right.
You don't know where they're coming from, and you don't know if they're bringing drugs and alcohol into your home. So getting to know the kids your children are hanging out with. Oh no, I did that. So my kids are all grown.
Yeah.
My kids are all grown. I have grandkids now.
Awesome.
And so, but the same thing goes for my grandkids. No, we need to know who your friends are. And oh no, let's call the parents.
Yeah. Did you do some of that when you were parenting?
Oh, I did it all the time, Debbie.
That's great.
All the time because it's important.
Yeah.
You know, I have 4 kids, so they were everywhere and doing everything. But I had to make sure. Well, we had to make sure we knew who they were with.
Yeah.
Because that was, not to say my kids didn't get all involved because they did.
Right.
But they're grown now and living their own lives and doing their stuff. But what parents need to do is not be their kids' friend, be their kids' parent.
Yeah.
Be their kids' parent.
Right.
You can, and I used to tell my kids all the time, no, I'm friendly towards you, but I'm not your friend. I have to make the hard decisions. I can't be your friend and make hard decisions. But now that my daughters are grown, they say, I don't care what you say, Mom, you are my best friend.
Aww.
So now that they're grown, of course I can, because I'm no longer like,
but
I'm still,
like
this. But
that's great.
But I think it's really, it's extremely important. And let them, allow them to make mistakes and understand, what did you learn from that mistake?
Because if you're their parent instead of their friend, when they make a mistake, you can have that conversation.
You can have that conversation.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I like
exactly, Debbie.
Thank you so
You're
much.
So very welcome.
Yeah.
Listen as Candy from Indiana talks about understanding our influence as parents.
I think parents need to understand truly how much influence they actually do have on their kids. Their kids are really listening to what they say. I work with a lot of youth, and a lot of things that they tell me, they say, well, my parents said this, or my mom said this, or my dad said this. Parents may not realize that the students are listening, but they are, and they're watching what you do.
Yeah.
Students in my area emulate what their parents do, even though they may not tell their parents, hey, I'm watching you, or hey, I'm listening to what you're saying. They're paying attention.
Yeah.
So you as a parent have more influence than you actually know.
It's a great thing to tell us.
It is really the biggest thing.
Yeah.
I have so many parents that feel like that they just have no effect on their kids, and I keep telling them, no, your kids listen to you. Your kids are watching you.
Yeah.
When you decide to pick up water instead of alcohol, they're noticing that. When you decide, hey, I'm going to put this alcohol in some sort of cooler thing and take it to a game, they're watching you do that.
Yeah.
And when they watch you and they learn from that, then that's what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah.
They may not ever say, hey, I learned that from you, but they are. So be careful what you say, be careful what you do. Definitely communicate with your children.
Yeah.
No matter if they're rolling their eyes or going, talk to them anyway.
Yeah.
Because they're hearing you.
Yeah.
They do. They really do.
listening to you say all this, it just is making me think there's an aspect of bravery that you have to have as a parent.
Yes.
You know, just knowing and believing that you're making a difference because there's no feedback.
There's
Like you're
no
saying,
feedback, you're right.
you're not getting it.
And because there's no feedback, or you may get that eye roll.
Yeah.
It may hurt your feelings a little bit.
Yeah.
But you know what? It's okay.
Yeah.
Because they do hear you.
Yeah.
I've told my mother as an adult, you have no idea how much I was really listening to you, even though I was huffing and puffing, even though I was just doing the eye roll and just saying, okay, whatever.
Yeah.
A lot of things that you told me, I actually heard.
Yeah.
It stayed in my head, so when I had to go and do other things or make decisions for myself, I was hearing you because you told me anyway.
Wow.
My mother, by the way, was really good at that. She huff. I don't care if you huff and puff. I'm going to tell you anyway.
I love it.
And I told her, I heard you.
Yeah.
I didn't want to admit it.
Yeah, right.
But I heard you. And when I had to make those decisions, I heard your voice. Yeah. And that's what made me decide not to do it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, so parents, they hear you.
That's amazing. And also for parents to know it's happening in every single other household out there too.
Yes.
It's huffing and puffing and not listening, acting like I'm not hearing you, all of that.
And it's like, oh, you don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah.
You do.
You do. That's awesome. Thank you so much.
CADCA has an important youth component. It hopes to be training the next generation of prevention leaders and involves youth in this mission in as many ways as possible. Attending a CADCA conference is one of those ways. We had a group of guys stop by the Talk They Hear You table and speak with us.
So you guys do not look like parents. Not yet. Are you guys in high school or college?
High school.
Yeah? What do you think parents need to know?
I think that they should probably know how much it relates to the social groups that they're in at school and events that they do, because it's proven that with a lot of open time, people are more likely to abuse substances. So filling your time up as a youth is very important.
That's great.
I'd say that really instill from an early age that you just kind of get it in their mind. And if if you talk about it a lot and you really make them aware of it, and it's something they are very informed about, that they'll have a less chance of using it and abusing it.
I like that. That's fantastic. Any other thoughts for parents?
To tie in what these two lovely gentlemen said.
Yes.
I think it's definitely, it's there, is what it's important to know. When I get home from school, my parents oh, how was your day? I don't say, I walked into 3 kids vaping today, but it's there, even if it's not brought up.
Yeah.
It's something to be aware of.
So parents should just assume that...
To an extent.
To an extent.
Don't assume that your child is doing it, but know it's out there.
Okay.
They're surrounded by it some way or another.
Okay, yeah.
You want to?
Sure. And just adding on to that, making sure you have a baseline level of support, not only about understanding as parents in a parental unit, you're going to support your child with the decisions they make. They're probably going to mess up at some point. That's involved in growing up and being a young person, but trying to support them and influence their decisions to be more responsible, supporting them not only in dealing with substance misuse, but mental health, supporting them dealing with stuff like that.
You guys, that's really great. Parents, we're so crazy. We live with you guys, but sometimes we're never talking to you, right? And we don't know what's going on in your head, and we make a lot of assumptions about that. So it's good. It's great advice for us. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Parents share the importance of talking with kids about fentanyl, and the team from We Think Twice tells us to embrace those uncomfortable conversations.
That one pill can kill.
Okay.
That they really need to understand that it's not what it was 20 years ago. Now with synthetic drugs and fentanyl, there's kids that are dying just from trying something one time, and it's in everything.
And so as a parent,
yes,
and I know you're right, and I'm thinking about parents listening to that, it's just horrifying.
It's really frightening.
And so is there any answer other than just locking our kids in rooms and not letting them leave?
I don't know. I was reading something that intrigued me. It was the Just Say No campaign, but the no was KNOW. And it was really getting that information out there because kids are smart.
Yeah.
Kids will be smart if you give them the tools to understand. And
right. Explaining the whole laced and replaced aspect of all medication and this idea that you can't take street drugs anymore because they may all be fentanyl.
Right.
You can't order a drug off the internet anymore because it may say it's prescription, but it could just be a fake drug.
Right.
I think our kids, I think they can grasp that.
I absolutely do. I think that they can grasp it, and I think just being honest with them and just real reality-based information, I think is really the answer. That's what I believe. But
Awesome.
I don't know. Just one person,
yeah.
one mom.
One mom.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
You said your campaign started with sexuality and relationships between partners, and now you're branching into other topics as well?
Other topics pertinent to parents and how we can help parents learn about the concerns that their teens may have and what steps and actions they can take to be more effective in their work with their own teens and with their teens' friends.
That's great. Yeah. The drug and alcohol conversation's uncomfortable. That sexuality conversation is off the charts uncomfortable. Would you just
And there are resources that we think Twice has published that deal with how to start having that conversation.
It's ongoing. Well, and that is common to everything with teens. It's not a one-time. It's a bunch.
And, I think one of the things that we're trying, I keep trying to make sure we're talking about is that it's not always going to be a parent that's going to be that person.
Oh.
So like in my own teens' lives, while I think I was pretty knowledgeable and relevant, both of my kids had another adult that they knew that they could go to if it wasn't me. And that other adult had full permission to, if my child needs healthcare services, if you need to get, you do that, and you don't even have to tell me, because there needs to be somebody, because you never know what's going on. There's so much that is related to that parent-child relationship that can be, kind of loaded. And so having that other person.
Another parent. So we talk about parenting peers, knowing your kids, friends, parents, navigating the world together. That's kind of taking that to a whole nother level too. But recognizing that it takes a village. It's maybe a tired statement, but it's completely real.
It's so real. Yeah, absolutely. And before I came to the federal side, we did a lot of trainings with coaches and other adults that have much more touch points than parents sometimes, right? So providing education and resources to all of those people that have any point of touch with our young people is so important.
So good. All right. We are all on the mission. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Yeah.
More moms and dads share their wisdom.
What's the most important thing parents need to be thinking about or be aware of when it comes to underage substance use?
Talking honestly with your kids. Talking.
Yeah. Talk. They hear you, right? Kind of simple stuff. Yeah. It's amazing how simple and how difficult it is all at the same time, isn't it?
Well, in the current environment, I think it's important because they're getting a lot of information off of social media, they're getting things from their friends, and oftentimes it's incorrect or it's not comprehensive.
Right.
So
one little
parents,
piece.
really should take the role. People think that the school should take care of their kids, or
Right.
people are going to take that role. And I think a lot of parents not fulfill their obligations and duties in that specific area.
Right. And a lot just don't realize they need to be.
So we have a really unique situation, not unique, but we live a very affluent community.
Okay.
Okay, and so what generally are seen maybe as protective factors when it comes to not having some of the become actually risk factors, because when I say there's access galore, the funds are there, but also it's just so kind of well hidden in the way it's done, and so people are like, that's not happening here. It's not happening here. The need for conversations and things like that, So, I mean,
wow, yeah. So
just the conversation. I just feel like they just need a better understanding, like an accurate picture of what really is going on in the community with their kids, but also the risk perception. Understanding how kids' risk perception is so far off from what the real true harms are, and that's their role as the parents. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
To kind of share those things. So,
Right.
There's a lot of different things. But parents just need an open forum for conversation too. They need other parents talking about it so that they feel safe talking about it, because that's a big thing that we see. Once parents start talking about it, it's like, listen, me too. You're dealing with that too. The things that we've worked on as a coalition are the social hosting ordinance, and a lot of things about trying to educate parents. And what I've actually found to be more effective in messaging is not so much just that, because there's a lot of that happens at the social, hey, they want to hang out in the basement. It's, safer here, we'll take their kids, things. And one of the most successful messages I've been able to communicate with parents is actually the liability of it.
Yeah.
Which to me is kind of sad, because when you talk about the financial liability, like, you've got this stuff that you want to protect. If something happens to one of these children at your house, you are liable.
You're losing it all.
Liable.
Yeah.
And if it's one of my kids, I'd be coming after you full force. So, so that's actually been more effective in people being like, oh my gosh.
Hadn't thought of it that way.
I hadn't thought about it like that.
Yeah.
To where they think, but there's definitely a lot. It is very common for like the homecoming, for birthdays and stuff.
Yeah.
To have the kids over, they kind of put them in the basement. The parents are upstairs chatting, having their New Year's Eves and stuff. So we worked on a social hosting ordinance, and we've actually had a couple of significant situations happen in the last couple of years with parents that got in trouble for that, because there was really bad incidences that happened at their houses. So.
Well, and you never want to hear it, but if we can all learn from that, then that's a powerful thing.
And sometimes it needing to just happen in that community. For
Right.
people to be like, oh, it is happening in this community.
Right.
So there's just a lot of stuff, but I love what you guys are doing. I like this way to have conversations and recognizing why it's important. I just think parents in our community just are like,
why are we worried about this?
Why am I talking about, like, I know my kid, not my kid. That's
Yeah.
somebody else's kid, not my kid.
Yeah.
You know?
The first thing they need to know is stigma is going to kill their children.
Yeah. Okay. Talk more about that.
Because it's your child, you are so protective. So I tell parents, you're biologically incapable of not enabling your child. Been there with both, right?
Yeah.
20 years sober when my kids were showing
Yeah.
addiction.
Yeah.
And eyes on,
Yeah.
24/7.
And you were looking for it, and you still couldn't see it.
I was counting on it.
Yeah, right.
Basically. So 2 out of 3.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing that you need to be aware of. The life of your child is at forefront now, so you need to get professional help immediately. If it walks like a duck and it waddles like a duck, it's a duck. Nobody knows your child better. If you're seeing something, do not deny what you're saying, because that could be the life of your child. That's my message.
Do you mind if we share that with parents?
Go right ahead.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
More Prevention Day attendees from Maryland, New York, and Georgia offer perspective and advice.
Okay, you guys just are so cool looking. I can't stand it. With your hair, and you just have a presence. And my name's Debbie, and I'm the host of the Talk They Hear You podcast. And we're out here today asking attendees if they work with parents or if they are parents, and what they think is most important for parents to know.
For me personally, I don't have any children.
That's all right.
However, one thing that I remember from my childhood is my parents being very transparent with me about what was going on. So I think transparency is most important.
I like
Just
that.
keeping it real with your kids so that they feel comfortable enough to come to you. So in those instances where they may feel influenced or you thinking about trying it, they won't just go with their first mind. They be like, I never seen my parents do that.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm curious about this. Let me ask my parent, because I know they always give me good advice. They don't judge me. And just having that no judgment zone and being able to be transparent and having that revolving door of communication, I think, is most important.
That's perfect. Thank you so much. Yeah, no, parents are hard to get attention right now. What did you think their main concern was based on their questions?
Well, this particular group really had a lot of questions about marijuana.
Okay.
Which the majority of them don't. They're like, oh, it's just marijuana. It's
Right.
like, no, it isn't.
Yeah.
And it's one of our largest problems in our district. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So that was interesting, because that's what we're trying to get the parents to come in and say, this is not
Yeah.
your grandparents or your parents.
Or yours.
Yeah. It's not.
Yeah,
So-
exactly. So we also have a podcast that goes along with Talk They Hear You.
I saw something on that.
Yep.
I've not heard the podcast.
So any platform.
This is Joe Rogan.
Well, Joe's a big competitor of ours. No,
good,
just kidding.
of course.
I mean, he is. But we're on all platforms. So next time you're listening to Joe, look up Talk They Hear You, and we're there. Talk They Hear You, What Parents Are Saying.
Oh, so it is all based on your office. Oh, that's
So I'm the host, and my name's
Okay,
Debbie, and we are actually, nice to meet you. We are asking,
Do you make as much money as Joe does?
I don't.
We'll see what we can do with that. Okay?
Exactly. Got to start working on that. I got to get some sponsors. What else should parents be doing?
Talk, they hear you.
Talk, they hear you. So can we record you on that? Can you? Okay. What else would you tell parents?
Tell parents that they need to actually talk less use less words, and try to listen more.
Interesting. Talk, they hear you, or listen more. I like it.
And to not to tell kids anything.
Okay.
But to ask them questions. If you ask the right questions, it's going to help the kids to figure out how to answer that.
Yeah.
And if you ask the right questions, actually the kid will not answer quickly what you're answering. They're going to have to think about it. And
Good.
we call that a psychological term of perceptual control theory.
Okay.
So perceptual control theory, not to get too technical.
Go ahead.
Control theory, and what some people do is ask a why question. And what you're trying to do is match up your perception with what reference you had from the past. When you're talking to kids, you may wonder why they don't see your side of it. It's because they have a different reference than you do.
I see.
So essentially, everybody has a different perception.
Yeah.
But sometimes you have to really listen well and ask the right question to find out what their reference is.
Interesting.
And then, but to tell people things is not good.
Well, and without regard to that reference, people can't hear as well.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. From being a parent we've got 3 kids
Okay.
and 3 grandkids right now. But you think you're a good listener, well, we can all become better at listening, and that's tough depending on who you're talking to,
right?
What age they are, what temperament they are.
You probably had some success with that with your own kids.
Well, there are successes. Life is is up and down thing, right?
Yeah.
So right now our kids are a great place.
Yeah.
But we go ups and downs still all the time.
Yeah.
But yes, everything's going real well with us as of today.
I love it. Today is what we've got.
Today is what we've got.
Thanks so much for sharing that with us. I really appreciate it.
Josh from West Virginia and Gayanne from North Carolina tell us what their coalitions have found parents needing in their communities. Then Gayanne introduces us to Vidya, a youth ambassador in her community that is actually conducting research to help parents talk to their kids.
We're doing little interviews, asking attendees what they think parents should know. Got anything you want to tell us? Yeah?
So we just went through our coalition academy and training, and a part of our strategic plan is to get with the parents and things. And then, like I was telling her, a lot of Barber County students are being raised by grandparents, aunts, uncles, or others that find it difficult to connect with those individuals. So I guess that would be one thing, is just how to speak to the youth, how to connect with them, to have meaningful conversations, and not just sometimes those you feel like don't do drugs or don't do this is a conversation, whereas you need to get on a deeper level with it. So.
Well, all important stuff. That sounds great. The grandparent thing is a big deal, and we increasingly are seeing that in our country with grandparents becoming primary caregivers. We actually did a podcast about a year ago with a gal whose focus is on that, and it was really pretty fantastic.
Are those podcasts still available to consume?
Yeah. Any podcast platform you're on, look for What Parents Are Saying. It's there. They're all listed. So, yeah.
Thank you so much.
Take care. What's the main thing you guys are telling parents right now?
And so, how to look at those parenting styles and the messages that kids receive. And that's a really important piece. Because parents are not...
That sounds great.
Okay.
So what are you learning, and what do parents need to know?
Okay. So my project is mostly kind of observing what students want to hear from parents. Some surveys we've done. And so a lot of it isn't necessarily specifically about substance use, but they want to know specifically about stress factors and coping mechanisms. Because a lot of times you see base. So knowing alternate coping mechanisms can help students. They really want to know about time management and romantic relationships. Those are 2 that we specifically got requested from the survey.
Interesting.
And then what I like to talk to parents about is communication strategies. And my number 1 thing is always be willing to listen. because a lot of times students don't feel heard by their parents.
Yeah.
So they don't feel comfortable opening a dialogue with their parents about something that's really serious. So establishing communication about small things first.
Yeah.
And just, no matter whether or not you disagree with what they're saying,
Yeah.
you have to always be willing to listen to what, like hear where they're coming from,
right,
and what they need from you. Otherwise, you'll never be able to help them.
So, you're talking about so many great things. Do you think there's any advice for parents? I mean, how do we just make ourselves listen? Is that all it is? Do we just absolutely have to?
I mean,
what do you
that
think?
Can go so many different ways. You can tell people as much as you want, just be willing to listen. And, in the heat of the moment, when you're trying to, because parents want what's best for the children ultimately, right?
Right.
So when you hear something that's maybe like a red flag in your brain as a parent,
yeah,
you really want to just kind of stamp it down and just
right,
say, no, you can't ever do that. Like, don't even think that. And then all that really accomplishes is you're telling them they can't trust you. You're just kind of like completely blocking the communication. So they're just like, oh, right, well, you won't even hear me out. Like, maybe I didn't even agree with this and I just wanted to talk about it with you. And you just completely shut me down. So I don't want to talk to you at all. If you're not willing to listen about this one thing, then what else are you not willing to listen about? So then why don't I just go somewhere to someone who actually is going to listen to me? In their case might be a peer who might not have the parental experience to be able to advise them on specific topics that are really serious. Kind of using examples is really helpful. Say having your child come to you and talk about using a vape as a stress relief, finding it in their clothes,
right,
or smelling it on their clothes.
Yeah.
And to parents, how would you respond to that? Because it does put you on the spot.
It does.
I was there for that presentation. We had them split up into groups, and I was just like, here's what I would say to how you responded. So kind of like just giving them more opportunities to figure out where they'd be coming from with certain things and what their approach might be. So what we really want to do is open those lines of communication and do whatever we can not to close them. And
that's a hard one too.
Another thing I really want to stress for parents is that you can be willing to listen and your kid can trust you with that as much as you like, but you also have to show them you're vulnerable. You're not like showing any weakness to your kid, trying to be strong for them.
Yeah.
But all that really shows is that you don't care. So just kind of showing that your kid that you're struggling too.
Yeah.
And you're just like, hey, I'm struggling, you're struggling, let's work through it together. Let's be a team.
I love it.
And so stressing the parents, you don't have to be strong all the time. Just showing them that you're hurting too and you're struggling too and letting them in on some things that you're going through can be really helpful.
Wow.
Because then we're kind of thinking, oh, maybe they don't have it all figured out. Maybe we can help.
Nice to meet you. Thanks for coming back. Yes. Appreciate it. To end this episode, we catch up with Erin Wick. She's the Executive Director of Behavioral Health and Integrated Student Support. Her Educational Service District number 113 in Washington State is a longtime partner with our campaign. Her team has even begun to offer parent night out trainings from the Talk They Hear You campaign to all parents and coalitions across the country. She offers much wisdom next, and if interested, please look into the Parent Night Out trainings on the Talk They Hear You website. We just wanted to take a minute and ask attendees what's their best or most important message to parents, or what's the hope that you want for parents, or how do you interact with parents in your community?
Well, I think the most important thing our parents can do right now is educate themselves so that they can help their children have those crucial conversations. And I think that in our communities, our parents are really struggling because they're unsure as to what to say. They don't have all the facts. Things have changed significantly since they were kids, and they're just really fear-based at this point. And so our staff are continuing to work with these families to answer their questions, figure out what they need to know, host events such as Parent Night Out, which we're co-hosting with SAMHSA and Talk They Hear You. So we'll be hosting those monthly nationally, so that's fantastic. And those are just really good information that every parent needs to know.
Right. So a baseline to at least get started.
Absolutely.
Well, that's fantastic. So if any of our listeners wanted to tune in to the Parent Night Out offerings that you're making available nationally, which is pretty great, how can they find you?
So you can go to the Talk They Hear You website, and they are posted on there, or you can go to Educational Service District 113, and you can search Parent Night Out, and their registration links are on there as well.
Okay, that's perfect. Thank you so much. We had an amazing day at SAMHSA's Prevention Day. We hope you enjoyed everyone that we got to talk with. We also want to remind listeners that Talk They Hear You materials, including this podcast, can be found at the Talk They Hear You website. It is
Talk They Hear You, all spelled out with no spaces, .samhsa.gov. SAMHSA is SAMHSA.gov. Please share this site and this podcast with your friends. The more we can be in conversation with each other, the better for everyone, especially our kids. Also, we'd like to hear from you. Would you like to be on our show? Do you have stories to share or tips and techniques that have worked for you? Do you have any questions for us or feedback on topics or improvements of any kind? We know your input will help us design the most useful interviews possible. Please contact us at WhatParentsAreSaying@gmail.com for any of this. Again, all spelled out, WhatParentsAreSaying@gmail.com. This podcast is brought to you by the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. Talk They Hear You is a national prevention campaign that aims to help parents and caregivers talk with their kids about the dangers and risks of underage drinking and other drug use. As a reminder, the views expressed here are not necessarily those of SAMHSA or the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. Thank you all for joining us, and we'll see you next time.